Giyu and Sanemi are two very fan favorites in the community, two characters that people love and actually somewhat collaborate at during the end of the series or during the ending arc of the series, which we get a really cool panel of them combining each other's swords and basically making both of their swords shine red to kill and fight Muzan, right? So, looking at that panel, I got the great idea to put Giyu and Sanemi against every single upper moon. Now, what they will have in this little gauntlet of mons, they will have their Demon Slayer marks, and they will start off at their peak at 100%, and they will also have access to Red Blade the same way how they accessed it in the Muzan fight by clashing swords. Now, this will vary depending on the opponent, since if their opponent is near equal speeds, is the same as both of them, it'll be harder to get that clash off without it being interrupted. So it'll vary depending on that. But let's get right into it. Now, we're starting off with Kaigaku, the replacement Upper Moon 6, which will be their first matchup. The reasoning is Mark Sanemi should upscale his base self, who outperformed Muichiro in the Kokushibo fight, and at that point, Muichiro upscales Upper Moon 5 levels after he got stronger, so using that logic, Sanemi would just be over Kaigaku using that chain scale. As for Giyu, in his mark state, he's able to go relative to Akaza, which is levels and ranks above Kaigaku, and we know Akaza is over Kaigaku due to the rank difference, and just the fact that in terms of feats, he completely shadows Kaigaku. But even if they were in their base, they would still easily be able to take down Kaigaku, if Giyu scales to somewhat relative to base Sanemi, and base Sanemi still scales above Mark Muichiro, we can get them both at that level, right? With of course Giyu being at least a little bit lower when it comes to being relative, since I do think Sanemi's base is a little bit higher than Giyu's base. Alright, so moving on, we get into the actual real upper moons. Moving on to Gyutaro and Daki. Now that I already covered where Giyu and Sanemi should scale, this fight could go one of two ways. Giyu and Sanemi at their peak should just be faster and outright just have better techniques than Gyutaro and Daki. I do think Gyutaro could definitely put in way more work than Kaigaku if he could get off the huge scale attack he did in the entertainment district. But besides that, Giyu and Sanemi would be able to just split up and cut their heads off separately. And on top of that, I did forget to mention, with the huge scale attack, if Tengen was able to survive and outrun it, I don't doubt the fact that Sanemi or Giyu could either, especially if they're marked, right? So I do think regardless, the situation just isn't in Gyutaro's favor, even if he does do that kamikaze move. Now, this moves us into upper ranked 5, Gyoko, and just like I said at the beginning, Sanemi already upscales the Swordsman Village arc version of Muichiro, who absolutely cleared in Perception plus True Form Gyoko. Sanemi probably wouldn't need Giyu's help for this one, but with Giyu there, it just guarantees the dub, even more with him just scaling the Akazu, who scales above Gyoko via the upper moon ranking and how Gyoko respects him. So, moving on, we are now on Upper Moon 4, and this is where it does get a little bit choppy, right? So, with Hantengu in particular, it's more of a complicated fight. Not because Hantengu has better scaling than them, but his ability to be able to shrink and hide himself in his own bodies is crazy, and being so small that he's hard to see. Giyu and Sanemi's senses are good, but it's still contentious, since they don't have see-through worlds, so they can't just see through their body or just find the real body. If they'd be able to find the real body, although instead of that being the way how they win, I think with their absurd stamina, they could fight until the sun rises, especially against an opponent that isn't necessarily on their level when it comes to speed. I could maybe see Zohakuten being a bit annoying to deal with, but I'd give them this win no doubt. The first win by outlasting, funny enough. So now we're getting into the uncharted territory. Now we get into the fun stuff. Upper Moon 3 Akaza. Now we actually do get to see Giyu and Akaza fight, which him and Giyu are able to trade blows and go quite relative. The only reason Giyu started to lose is because humans get tired unlike demons, so eventually he would start declining, but that wouldn't happen with Sanemi here backing him up. Sanemi should upscale both of them using the scaling earlier, having more feats in the Kokushibo fight, like being relative in combat speed with Mark Gyome and being able to avoid some of Longsword Kokushibo's breathing forms. Even if barely, still a pretty notable feat. I do think him and Giyu together would be able to take him out easier and quicker with less damage and casualties. And honestly, if we didn't want to go further, and say Akaza was relative with them, Sanemi could just use his blood to nerf Akaza into the ground like he does with Kokushiba, which I only think he would use if he is going up against a strong opponent, which Akaza fits the requirements of. And let's just say they do cut Akaza's head off and he ends up trying to regrow it. They can then hit him with the red blade, which I do think they would have enough time to get off, and they would definitely take him out with that. So they do have a counter to his regeneration of the head technique. Now, this is where it gets even more complicated than it was before, right? Because they were moving into the second highest rank, which is Doma. Now, I do think Doma and Sanemi would be at least relative in speed, like I spoke about in my video with Dirk, and if you haven't, go check that out. Giyu at his highest would probably be able to react to Doma, but as far as keeping up in combat, I think he would lack in. We are aware just how insane Giyu's reaction speed is, so I don't think it's insane to say that he could react to Doma, or at least react to him slightly with him being outpaced. Although with Sanemi there, and if he uses his blood, he could nerf Doma further to make it an even playing field. Doma's biggest win cons are the Buddha and his Ice Princesses, and his speed, although all of these abilities take a hit once he's drunk off Sanemi's blood, which was able to even give Kokushibo such a big nerf. So I do think with Giyu supporting Sanemi and with Doma being drunk on Sanemi's blood, they could get the job done, although it would be a pretty hard battle regardless. Now, moving on to Kokushibo. No, they do not beat Kokushibo. That is where they stop. I'm not even gonna bring up the idea of them being able to beat Kokushibo. I do think they could give base holding big Kokushibo a slight run for his money for a little bit, but besides that, they're definitely not doing anything when he's trying or he's pulling out longsword. They're not doing anything against that. Now that does conclude the video, and this one was a quick one. I honestly thought about this just by looking at the panel, and I was like, huh, that'd be pretty fun if Giyu and Sanemi went against all of the upper moons, right, and see how they would go. But that is pretty much all, and I thank you all for watching the video. If you have any thoughts or contentions with any of my takes, you can leave it in the comments, and I'll most likely respond to it. But I will see you guys next time, and peace.